This unit deals with the subject of political culture and political ideology. I would like for you to read Chapter 4 fairly carefully to get the historical development of what this was all about. A political culture is generally defined as a characteristic and deep-seated set of beliefs about a particular set of governmental policies and governmental programs. Now, as you might well imagine, there are core values, there are political ideology, and there's culture and lifestyle, all of which go into the establishment of a political culture. Americans are very similar in many ways. When you do studies, you find that there are certain core values that persons almost completely across the political spectrum agree to. Individual liberty, equality, although there's a significant difference between liberals and conservatives on the question of equality. Public opinion supports the idea of equality of opportunity, but is not particularly strong on the idea of equality of result, although economic times and economic circumstances can change the focus on this. Support for religion. Fascinatingly enough, most studies indicate that Americans are very supportive of religion, but not a particular form of religion, depending on what part of the country you happen to live in, and are highly in opposition to the government attempting to impose particular religious views. There's also a tremendous support for community service and public achievement. The Americans probably belong to more different kinds of community organizations than any group in Western democracy. Now, there are some non-ideological ways to approach problems. These are called schemas. They're intellectual frameworks we use to evaluate the world. We'll look a little bit at schemas later on. Party identification is one of the more easily defined and explained schemas. Now, when we look at political ideologies, these are a coherent view of the way you see politics and government. Now, there's advantages and disadvantages to ideologies. One of the disadvantages to ideologies is they tend to blind you to seeing things as they are and cause you to want to see things as you think they ought to be or as you perceive them to be. We talk about a comprehensive or cohesive set of beliefs about the nature of people and about the role of government playing a major role in the idea of political ideology. Now, the book talks about the traditional approaches to political theory, liberal versus conservative. And if you read very carefully, you find that there's traditional conservatism and there are conservatism that it developed in the industrial age and neoconservatism. I'm not sure we want to get bogged down in all of the specifics. Just in the same way, liberalism tends to have various varieties as well. But the traditional approach is to consider that liberals support governmental actions to minimize government economic inequality, but tend to oppose governmental actions which will restrict cultural and social freedoms, whereas traditionally conservatives tend to be the mirror image of that. There are also some other classifications. Socialism, which is a strong support of economic and social equality. The book has a fairly good discussion of democratic socialism, and I find it interesting that Bernie Sanders, who is one of the strong contending candidates for the presidential nomination in the Democratic Party, defines himself as a democratic socialist. Libertarianism, and libertarianism is a skepticism or opposition to almost all kinds of governmental activities, and the leading libertarian today is Rand Paul, who is the son of Ron Paul, both of whom have libertarian backgrounds. Now, there came out a book in 1984, and I realize that's quite a ways back, entitled Beyond Liberal and Conservative. What Maddox and Lilly sought to do was determine the content of beliefs on a range of issues and then classify the resultant ideology. And some of the issues that they took were on the economy and personal and political conduct. Liberals tended to answer yes on issues such as government should ensure jobs, spend on medical and education, public infrastructure, progressive taxation where the rich paid a bigger percentage than did the poor, and conservatives tended to take the opposite position. On personal political conduct, fascinatingly, the liberals were much more tolerant of unconventional behavior and much more willing to protect the rights of the accused than were conservatives. So what Maddox and Lilly came up with were 4 categories: pure liberals, pure conservatives, libertarians, and populists. And they created this grid. Now, fascinatingly enough, when you survey an individual, very few tend to fit all the way in any one of those quadrants. Traditional political scientists tend to use a different category, and they break things into socialism, liberalism, conservatism, libertarianism. So let's wrap it up. How important is the understanding of ideology to understand politics? To what extent does ideology drive the policies that government pursues? We'll be dealing with that in the course, and I think we'll be dealing with it in this presidential election to come.